welcome back. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so we can get this channel out there more. Today I'm going to be doing a billet connecting ride on a Predator 212 non-Hemi. Originally I had planned on showing y'all how to do it without taking off the head and without removing the piston, but it didn't go as planned for me. I could not get my keyway. I couldn't get the key out of the flywheel side, the keyway out of that side. So I did have to take my head off, but in this video I'll show y'all how to do it without taking the head off or removing the piston, as long as you can get that key out of the keyway on the flywheel side. So stay tuned and I'll show y'all. You're also going to need a digital caliper, 1/4 inch torque wrench, assembly lube, and any type of motor oil, preferably 30 weight. First thing you want to do is take off your flywheel. Take the cover off, 4 8mm bolts. You don't have to take off the recoil from the cover. Just take the whole cover off. This is a 19mm nut. Take that off. You're going to want to put a pry bar under the flywheel with a little pressure. I have this in one of my other videos. And tap your crankshaft once you get the cup and the bolt off, and your flywheel will pop right off. Do that first. Once you take your cover off, just 6 10mm bolts. Take your spark plug out. You're going to want to pop out. Make sure they're lined up. Put it in the top or center. It don't really matter in the end, but I always like to do that. Take your camshaft out. Put it somewhere safe. I'm going to put mine right in my case. Take out your lifters and your push rods. Oh, that push rod is up in there still, but I'll get it out. Maybe not. Sorry, I just had to take the valve cover off. Okay, next you're going to want to loosen up your rod cap and take that off. 2 bolts, they're going to be on there tight. I believe they're, what are they? I'll let you know what size they are. Yep, they were 10mm bolts on the rod caps. Just a standard 10mm wrench. You can see the scoring. Can't feel it with my finger, but this is a brand new engine. It hasn't even got probably not even 2 hours runtime on it total. That's not very good for Harbor Freight quality. Anyway, you're going to want to take this crankshaft out. So you're going to have to find the right position. You're going to have to twist it until your piston goes all the way up, I believe, to get this crankshaft out. This will just pop right out. You have to have it in this position to get the bolts out of the rod cap. So rotate it slowly. Take your time until it goes up. I believe that's the right position. And you want to take your time until you get this out. I'm going to need 2 hands. You got to find the sweet spot, so you're going to have to play with it. So, plan B. For whatever reason, I could not get the key out of the keyway for the flywheel. Thing is stuck in there. Could not get it out, so I had to take the head off. I'm going to have to take the piston out. So I had to put the connecting rod cap back on temporarily. Take your head off. You got to take your valve cover off first. 4 8mm bolts comes right off. 4 13mm 12mm bolts, I'm sorry, to take your head off. This metal head gasket here is reusable on the Predator 212s, so save that. We're gonna have to take this piston out. My original plan, if you can get that keyway out, you can pull this crankshaft out and you can drop the piston down far enough to where your wrist pin shows. It'll come down further than this. You'll be able to bring it all the way down to where your wrist pin shows, and your compression rings will still be seated, and you can pull the wrist pin out, pop the clip out, pull the wrist pin, take the connecting rod off, put the new rod on, put your new wrist pin in. You always want to use new wrist pins, and then you could do it that way. Much easier, but I can't get this key out of the keyway from the flywheel side, so I'm stuck doing it this way. So if you're gonna do it this way, you want to make some marks. I don't have a permanent marker, so I use nail polish. Do not get this nail polish on the inside of your whatever, you know what I'm talking about, the piston chamber, whatever it's called. And clean this off after you get it in. That's my recommendation, because this will flake off. It's nail polish with hardener, but you have to make sure you get this piston lined up perfectly when you put it back in, so that your bearings aren't cockeyed on your crankshaft. So make sure you get her lined up perfectly when you put this back in with the piston ring compression tool. Okay, well, I couldn't, I got a little off track because I couldn't get that flywheel key out. So there's a million videos on how to put a piston back in the engine. Like I said, make sure you mark them up like that so you can get them in perfectly straight. That's in there. That's the new connecting rod. I'll show you the torque sequence to put the new cap on. Make sure you got your assembly lube on there. I haven't done this one yet. Where's my ring compressor at? Oh. Once you got the piston in here with the rings oriented across from each other, the gaps, tighten this down as far as you can get it, as tight as you can get it. And once you set it on here, take your hammer and tap all along this compression tool. Make sure it's on there flat so your rings don't get hung up. And then once you're at that point, you're on there flush, take the rubber end of your hammer and lightly tap your piston. Lightly tap your piston down the compression tool. If you feel any resistance, do not force it. Start over. Take it out. I had to start over once when I just put this one in. Start over. Tighten it back down. The main thing is make sure this is on here flush. If it's not, that is what will get your piston rings caught up on here and not allow your piston to go in. So next, I'll show you the torque sequence on how to put the cap on the rod. Get your assembly lube first. First thing, get your assembly lube. Put or motor oil. You can use motor oil if you're planning on starting the motor soon after assembling, but assembly lube's always better. It's winter time now. I'm not going to be running this motor until next spring. I might start it up, stuff like that, but it's not going. My mini bike's not getting driven until next spring. Lube it up good. You really don't even need that much. It'll squirt out the side, and with your clearances and all. Now, your oil dipper is going to go face down. The main thing is make sure this rod is in the right position. It goes the same exact way this one does. The long part here, this part here, see how it's off centered? That will be facing down. Okay, just like that. And your dipper will be facing down also, which is this. This will scoop up your oil and it'll go into there and it'll lubricate your bearings through there. That's another reason why these are so much better. You get better lubrication on your bearings. See through there? This one just splashes the oil around up in there, which is why I've probably got marks on the bearing already. Or there's no bearings, but the rod cap. It's not being lubricated enough. And I wasn't really revving the shit out of this motor either. I had the governor on, I was breaking it in, so. Okay, I'll be right back. I get positioned to where you can put the screws in here. About right here is good. The assembly lube will stick it together good enough to where you can get your bolts. You want to dip them in oil. You want to torque them down wet. They call it wet torquing. With these, you want oil on there, just like that. Put it into your rod cap. Get both of them in first before you hand tighten them down. Okay. Your main tool on this, putting this cap in, is you have to have a 12-point 1/4-inch socket, and I'll tell you, they are not easy to find. I believe eBay sells them a 1/4-inch size socket, 12-point, small 12-point socket. That's why they're so hard to find. And eBay does have them. You're gonna be paying like $6 to $7 for it, so it's not cheap. Hand tighten your bolts, and then you're gonna go down to start at 50 foot-pounds. Start at 50 foot-pounds on one, 50 foot-pounds on the other. Then you're gonna go up 20 foot-pounds each time. 70 foot-pounds on this one, 70 foot-pounds on this one. 90 foot-pounds on this one, 90 foot-pounds on this one. I mean inch-pounds, I'm sorry, inch. 110 inch-pounds on this one, 110 inch-pounds on this one. 110 inch-pounds on this one, 110, like I said. 130 on this one, 130. 150, 150. 170, 170. And that's your final torque, 170 inch-pounds. So something I just found out, you have to remove this oil level sensor. Connecting rod dipper's hitting it. It's wider. It's a wider dipper. So I'm gonna have to pull that out. I don't have a bolt to plug this hole. So I'm gonna see if I can leave this in here maybe and cut this off. If not, I'll have to get one from Go Power Sports. But so if you're gonna do one of these billet rods, you have to remove your oil sensor. Once you get your bolts torqued down to 170 inch-pounds, alternating by 20 inch-pounds each, you're pretty much good to go. Spin it around, make sure you're good. You can see this thing barely clears this case. Barely. This is a much sturdier rod. This stock rod here, my motor was knocking brand new. This thing was wobbling back and forth. I could move it. This one, you're supposed to have, it's okay to have a little play, you're supposed to, because there's a gap between the bearings and the crankshaft. But this one barely moves at all. This one here, I could move it you could see it moving. And I had a knock, which is more than likely the reason I have marks on my brand new connecting rod. So Harbor Freight, they're just throwing these things together, man. That's why they're $100 motors. If you want these things to last, or it'd be a good motor for you if you're racing or something, it's mandatory to have these. I'm getting a billet flywheel also, for safety more than anything, because I got 22-pound valve springs, so you know, I don't want a thing flying apart. I don't want a magnet in my leg, so I'm doing this for safety.